like they brought in Lil Durk and fucking they started like monitoring like the levels more or less, and it was just cool how like once it was ready, like Lil Durk was like, all right, we can go, and like, they were like, yeah, we could just start talking, and they started talking. It was dope.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
So welcome back to Bert's World Podcast. A couple announcements before we start. I won't be doing this every month anymore. Life got a bit hectic, so I got to slow down a bit. But hopefully you'll get to see a few episodes throughout the year. So here we go. It's Bert's World, and I'm not doing it. I'm not gonna do it.
Back on another video.
Back with another video, my boy.
Oh my god.
Another banger.
All right, so we're gonna start with your name, what school you go to, and your major.
Are we gonna start with me?
Yeah.
All right, so my name is Louis. I go to FIU. I study civil engineering at FIU, and I'm supposed to graduate in fall 2023.
Alrighty, my name's Eduardo. I also go to FIU. I'm majoring in mechanical engineering. I should be graduating late summer 2023.
Fire. So first question I want to ask is why you decided to go with engineering as your career route or as your field of study.
Okay. So just going back to like high school, I was always like really into like, obviously we all went to high school together. If you didn't know, we went to Jose Marti, and that was a STEM school. So we've always been surrounded by math, science, and that's something that I knew that I wanted to incorporate into my studies. I wanted to do something related to, we were always playing around with like, we would be in the Vex room doing fucking like robotics and things like that. And so I knew that I wanted to incorporate math and science into my studies somehow. Through high school, I started off the marine science lab, which you guys know about. If you don't know about it, basically we got in a couple fish tanks into the school just to incorporate a marine science curriculum into Jose Marti Mast. And that developed into being something where like we had first 3 tanks, then we proposed the idea of having a 400-gallon tank to our regional superintendent, and that got funded. We also spoke to Alberto Carvalho, if you guys know him, and they funded our marine science lab. So when I graduated from high school, or like when I was getting ready to apply to college, I came down to like, okay, I know that marine science is something that I really, really love. And I want to focus on like making, like, I wanted to focus whatever my career was on sustainability. And so when it came time to pick like a major, I was like, obviously I'm going to do environmental engineering because that's like, all right, environment and engineering together. So I go into college thinking that was like the perfect route for me. And I get there and I see that environmental engineering is not at all what I thought it was going to be. I had this big idea of like figuring out a way to construct buildings and kind of find a balance between the environment and the new infrastructure that was being built, if that makes any sense. And so that aligned more with like civil engineering, and that's why I ultimately settled on civil engineering as my major.
Gotcha.
So for me, it's similar in the sense that I went to Jose Marti. It was a STEM school, so on and so forth. But for me, it was more so the experiences that I had with some of my classes. I don't know if you remember Miss Kaylin. I felt like Miss Kaylin was a phenomenal teacher. I had her for both AP Physics and Astronomy. And in AP Physics, what I loved most was the teamwork aspect of engineering, which it's very involved in. Once you do mechanical engineering at FIU, there's a lot of teamwork involved in mechanical designing. And I really love that aspect of like just the whole field in general, trying to work together with a bunch of bright minds and just trying to get this one great idea to work. The research involved, I'm also, in love with it and whatnot. But for me, mostly, I guess in high school, it was just the astronomy class that I took. I'm really into astronomy. I'm really into like actual like physics, I guess. But at FIU, I figured that like as far as for a career path, I felt like physics wasn't the way to go. I wanted to get into something that was more applied for the general like workforce. So that's why I went with mechanical engineering. That was kind of like the first and only option I had, because once we started, they told you, oh, you got to pick a major and you can change it later, but you got to pick now. So I just went with mechanical engineering. It was the most general field, and the experience so far has been great. It's had its ups and downs, but overall, it's been a great experience.
So what would you say is the best part about your respective programs? And we'll start with Eduardo first.
The best part would have to be, well, at FIU, I don't know if you guys know this, but it's praised for having a very high not pass rate, but basically a high percentage of the students that pass get a job instantly right off college. And recently in my senior design one class, this one guy that I forgot the organization he was from, but it's basically these people that they go and they rate the school and how things are being ran and whatnot. And they were surveying us and whatnot. And I realized that the best thing about FIU, at least in the engineering building, would have to be just specific professors that put in a lot of work. For me, I don't know if you know Dr. Basil. Dr. Basil puts in a lot of work into his students. He provides crazy opportunities. He's like, thanks to him, I've had all the internship experience I have now. I've had all the research experience I have now. Other professors like Dr. Bootson, I've heard is really good. This guy, what's his name? I forgot his name. But anyways, certain professors are just good at getting you involved and whatnot. And as far as like my favorite thing, those professors have allowed me to figure that out, which is basically, like I said, just a teamwork experience and whatnot, just trying to work with a team and just a presentation aspect and whatnot. As far as like the actual stuff that you do in mechanical engineering, the classes itself, I mean, it's a tough course. It's not a lot of people like pass, not a lot of people get good grades in it. But there's nothing really too fascinating to me as far as the classes themselves. It's just mostly like the teamwork, mechanical design, generating new ideas, doing background research. That's just the best aspect of it for me.
I agree with what Eduardo was saying. Like everybody that I've seen in my major, as soon as they graduate, they find jobs. And I think that specifically for FIU with civil engineering, we're at a really good space in terms of location. If you come to Miami, you know that there's always new bridges being built. There's new buildings being created. So as far as construction goes, it's never stopping in Miami. So there's a really big demand for civil engineers here. And I think I think that would be the biggest plus of attending FIU for civil engineering. You're at a good location. As far as the program itself goes, I do think that the professors do a really good job of helping us out whenever we need anything. They're always emailing us with any internship possibilities. So it's definitely a really good program.
So then, do you have any favorite projects that you've done with these professors, or any classwork that you've done that really stood out to you during your time at FIU?
You want to take that on, or?
All right, I'll start. So during COVID, we had a lot of free time in our hands. I'm pretty sure everybody here can agree with that. And so I kind of took that as an opportunity to email literally every professor in the department with an idea that I had. And the idea was to use recycled plastic as aggregate in concrete. It had been done before at MIT. You can look up certain studies which have been done. And the biggest problem with adding plastic into concrete is that it brings down the overall modulus of the concrete. So I had to figure out a professor that could help me out with this research.
What is overall modulus?
Oh, the modulus is basically like, I'm gonna call it like the strength, basically.
Gotcha. Okay.
Of the concrete. So basically, it's less. It's gonna perform worse in compression, which is like the best part of concrete. Is really really good under compression.
Gotcha.
So, okay, backtrack. I emailed the professors and I came to one of them emailed me back and he was like, I'm definitely gonna help you out with this, and he put me in contact with his graduate student and helped me as an undergraduate student kind of do my own research, which most students at FIU don't get the opportunity to do that. They either have to join and do research with a professor that's already doing their own thing or a graduate student that's doing their own thing, but you never get to really start your own thing. So the fact that I got that opportunity was amazing.
What was, do you think, the driving factor to you getting the opportunity? Just reaching out, or was it the actual idea? Did you have prior relationships with that professor that helped out?
So definitely, I think just reaching out was the biggest thing, especially at the time. It was COVID. Nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
So the fact that an undergraduate student was reaching out to him, I think he was impressed by that. And I still keep into contact with the professor today, but no, I didn't have any prior relation to the professor. And at the time, I hadn't taken any engineering courses. I was taking like the base courses like calculus and things like that.
Okay. So it is possible without like going through all the traditional hoops, I would say,
For
to
sure.
get your own project. That's cool. How about you?
So, just like him, I basically got into research that was being done by a graduate student, and I was the undergrad in that situation. It was by the professor I mentioned, Dr. Basil. The way I got in contact with him was actually I didn't really do much. I had the same professor for thermodynamics and dynamics, and she recommended me to him. She was always looking for students that were like good in class and whatnot, so she recommended me to him. I remember she had asked me if I was interested during the middle of summer, and I was on vacation, and I kind of like ignored her at the time. But then a week passed, and I was like, you know what, let's just give it a shot, and that's how I started. So what I've been doing, which is definitely the one research I've done that I'm most proud about, is a non-destructive evaluation of adhesives using acoustics. So basically, adhesives are used to bond two parts together, commonly carbon plates. And the main idea of the project is that carbon plates are being used to make planes now, right? The problem with that is that but let's say like this, I'm making this up, but like let's say 70% of the plane is made with carbon plate bonding. The wings themselves are not made with carbon plate bonding. Why? Because if carbon plates that are bonded were to fail, they fail catastrophically, which means that you don't want that to happen in a plane. If a wing fails, like you want it to like be able to hold up at least a little bit until it lands.
Sure.
So the idea of the project is by using acoustics, we can measure basically how long it takes for these adhesives to cure over time. So what we do is we cure the adhesives at room temperature, at a set humidity, at a higher or lower temperature, whatever we want. And over time, we gather data. And basically, the data that we're gathering is the time it takes for the signal to get from one side of the adhesive to the other. So the faster it gets from one side to the other, you can make the assumption that the adhesive is getting harder and harder, which that's the idea of the adhesive. It cures over time due to temperature. So the idea is to work with certain adhesives and get a lot of common knowledge on them and being able to reliably tell companies, say, look, you can use this adhesive, and if you cure it at set temperature after an hour or 2 hours, you can move it down the manufacturing line. Because another problem with adhesives now is that a lot of companies, they tell you, hey, you can use this adhesive, but you got to give it like 2-3 days to start actually using it. But the problem with that is that once it's ready, what do? They say, oh, the adhesive's ready. They start moving it down the manufacturing line, which takes a very long time. And you know what they say, time is money. So once you get that data down and you can reliably tell others how, it's going to be good to use at this time, at that time, whatever, it can speed up the process. So the main idea is basically that, just work with adhesives that are commonly used in industry and just being able to tell people, hey, yo, you can use it at this time, at that time. And eventually, once our knowledge is very well thought out and we put a lot of effort into it and we have very reliable data, we can start using carbon plate bonding on plane wings and actually being able to, without having to destructively test the plane itself, we'll be able to tell, hey, this is good to fly, or it's not good to fly. So that's the main research I've been doing.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'd say like from the experience itself, this sounds kind of dumb. I remember that I have an internship coming up this summer with Cummins, and they had asked me, oh, what's like what's the most I guess the most interesting thing you took from that experience? For me, is how tedious and how annoying the research process is, because any like human interaction can mess anything up, and it's such a pain to get through it. But it makes you realize that like lots of big projects, it makes sense as to why it is that they take so long to like actually put forth, So yeah, that's all I got to say.
That's amazing. I like that.
Do you have any questions for him?
No. I would have to ask him after because fuck.
Yeah,
that's deep.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Where did you end up with your concrete project?
So as far as the concrete went, the most that we ever did was like an actual like review. So he helped me more so. I think the biggest takeaway from that was I learned how to review and read through scientific like literature.
Yeah.
Which was something I had never done before. So I learned how to like really like take notes on it, and I don't know if you guys have ever heard of like Mendeley.
No.
So it's basically like a citation kind of how do I say it, like on Google how you have the functions on the side.
Mm-hmm.
What are those called?
Like
functions on the side.
I know what you're talking about.
On the top
extensions.
Right? Extension. Like it's a Google extension.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically you can keep a whole library of all the scientific articles which you have read. And you link it to your Microsoft Word and it makes citations on the fly.
Gotcha.
Right? So it was something that I had never done before, and it helped me out a whole bunch of my classes because every time that we needed to do anything that was related to writing, I no longer had to go through the tedious process of writing the citations down manually or going like on Citation Machine, which I cannot trust for the life of me. This was a game changer for sure.
I made my own review paper on avocado seeds, which you happen to read.
Mhm.
And for that, I didn't use what did you call it?
Mandeli.
Mendeli.
Yeah.
I used one called Zotero.
Okay.
But they're pretty much the same thing. Really useful. No citation machines necessary. Especially if you're just doing what do you call it? Scholar papers on like Google Scholar or something like that.
Mhm.
Websites, it's a bit more tedious, but still like really helpful stuff. So what's the worst part about your respective programs? We'll start with you, Eduardo.
Can we start with you? Because I got to think.
Okay,
about
I'll
it.
start. The worst part for sure, although the professor helped me a whole bunch with learning about the specific project that I wanted to do, we were never able to find funding, even though he really tried to find funding for me. And the biggest problem is that since we're a public university, they have a hard time funding undergraduate students. I don't know what the politics behind that is, but like you can look anywhere at FIU and undergraduate students aren't getting funding for research. So I would say that that's the biggest downfall.
That's a good point. I mean, look at senior design. Look at the funding that students get for their projects. Sometimes they want to do like some crazy intricate projects, and the funding is like it just doesn't keep up.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, at least for me, I would say the worst of it has been that due to the funding, I hit it by accident. The process at which we're making progress on our research slows down significantly. And the problem with that is that it leads to me, I guess, getting bored of the research.
For sure.
Because as of right now, like, you know, I'm still a student, I'm young, and I want to learn as much as possible, and I want to do different things. So due to the funding, since we can't really move on to the next step, and then the next step, and the next step, it's just, it kind of gets I don't know, it's not as exciting anymore.
It's stagnant.
Yeah, so that's the main thing for me. That was actually one of my main selling points. I guess we're going to talk about this later, but when I got the internship for the next summer, I was telling them, look, I just want to learn as much as possible. I don't care what you put me in, but I want to do something different. I want to see what there is to know, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, for me, it's that, yeah.
Okay. And yeah, Larry, the next question is, what have summers looked like for you during your undergraduate career, internships, research projects, whatever you've been up to?
So for me, last summer, I went to New Mexico. The first internship I've ever did, which was right after my research with the professor I was talking about, was in Los Alamos National Laboratory. Very historic place. As far as the area where it's located, it's beautiful. Also, I say it's historic because that's where they did the Manhattan Project and the whole thing of the first nuclear bomb. So it was really like, how do I say this? It was just the fact that I was in such a historical place was really like, it was life changing for me.
And for engineering specifically.
And for engineering too. So it was a crazy experience. I also feel like for my specific field, and at least for what I'm doing, I'm becoming specialized in materials engineering, which I would have never thought I was going to do that. I just figured I was going to do mechanical engineering. And
what is materials engineering?
Just the study of materials, understanding material properties, all that, basically learning about all the tools that are used to study materials, such as tensile testing, compression, FTIR, which is used to measure the chemical composition of materials. Really just material characterization, whatever.
Gotcha.
You got me. Anyways, so, but as far as that place itself, it was a great experience. A lot of the jobs that you get right now as a mechanical engineering, especially into materials, is research and development. You don't really do anything that's like used for actual like manufacturing. Like you're not actually making something. You're just learning about the material. So as far as the research and development side of the job, it was super chill. Like over there, they were never really on top of us asking us, hey, are you guys doing work? Like it was just, you know, just they gave us their tools and they're like, all right, go ahead and have fun, learn. So as far as the job itself, it was a great experience. For me, New Mexico, it's just not the place to live in. It was 7,200 feet above sea level where I was located working at. And where we stayed at was 5,000 feet above sea level. So it was a constant 5 days in a row, just back and forth, back and forth. And I got super sick. Like, the elevation was just crazy. I had crazy headaches, so it's just not the place for me. Also, like, New Mexico and Miami is just, like, polar opposites. Like, it's not the same thing at all. So as far as the place, I would never see myself working over there. But the working experience itself was great. I wish, like, if I could move that lab over here, I'd totally work there. But that was the main takeaway for me. But as far as the place itself, yeah, the hiking was super fun. It's a beautiful landscape. And yeah, it was a great experience. So now the next summer, which it hasn't happened yet, I'm going to be going to Columbus, Indiana to work with Cummins, which they're known for their industrial engines. And they told me that I'm going to be working with 3D printing metals. So I have a good amount of experience 3D printing, but usually PLA, like the basics of 3D printing. So I don't really know much about 3D printed metals, so I'm looking forward to that.
I know it's completely like off topic, or not completely off topic, but I don't know if you've talked to Emilio.
Yeah.
Because he actually worked
He does
at
3D printing,
the 3D printing that they did metals as well, right?
Yeah. He probably knows more about it than I do because he's a computer science. So a lot more of computer science topics are more involved in that. For me, it's kind of just like we're doing research. Oh, we need a little piece of something to fix that. Okay, boom. Like, you know, that's really all we really do. But as far as like 3D printing for prototyping, it's like one of the most effective tools out there. 3D printing is the future.
For sure.
So
I would love to see how 3D printing affects the civil engineering like industry, especially considering that, I mean, on the note of your question, that for the internship that I'm doing this upcoming summer is going to be a precast concrete company. So I wonder how 3D printing is actually going to affect precast concrete and things like that in the future.
Have you seen like 3D printed houses and stuff like that?
I have.
Yeah.
They look cool. They look like they're going to be like, I feel like they're going to be a really good alternative to housing because they're obviously like cheaper to build. There's less, the actual building cost is less. So usually they're more like Lego pieces where you can just throw them in together. So yeah.
Very interesting stuff. So what's the future looking like for you? What do you want to do with your career now that you've gone through 4 years of college? Is there somewhere that you want to pivot that you're kind of looking to do, but you feel like you're not really ready yet for? Would love to know.
Personally, I'm very lost, to be honest with you. I graduated the end of this summer, and my original idea was I was going to come back to FIU to do the 4+1 program, so it allows you to do the master's in just a year. You need to meet, like, GPA requirements and whatnot. So that was my original plan, but I was talking to an advisor about it, and he told me, look, why do you want to do the master's? And I told him, in all honesty, it's because it's only going to take me a year. And he said, you know what? That's a good reason. However, if that's the only reason you're going to do the master's, you should not do it. It's not worth the time. He was telling me that, like, if Cummins right now, if I go and I do the internship and they offer me a job afterwards, I always have the option to go ahead and do it. Because that's the truth. I mean, companies don't give you an internship just for fun. They do it because they actually need someone for that position and they want to see if you're going to be worth it or not. So as far as the future, all of my questions will be answered once I do the internship and once I figure out how it is that things work. There's so many options. I mean, I could, again, come back, do my master's. I could stay and just work full-time with them, depending on the pay that they offer me. I could stay and then try to get them into paying me into doing a master's with a better university. I could, come back, do my master's, get a better position at that same place. It all depends. Maybe I don't like the place, you know? Yeah. So it just depends on the internship. I got to wait until that happens. So, yeah, I'm lost. But that's my idea.
I definitely think that we have a whole bunch of options right now. We're at a point in our educational career and just overall career where we have we have choices, and that's a great place to be at. I agree with Eduardo. Right now I'm kind of debating whether I should do a master's or not, even though in my field it's really, really suggested that you do one if you want to get into structural engineering specifically. I think most companies will ask you to have a master's. It's also really important to pass your, I think for you too, like the PE and the FE, whatever. So
what are those?
For sure. It's like the professional engineering exam and the engineering training exam.
It's like those law exams, like
like GRE.
Like the bar.
Bar, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
But those exams are extremely important that we pass them. Aside from that, if I do a master's, I don't know whether it'll be in. My biggest thing right now in terms of my confusion is more so where I want to take my career.
Yeah.
In terms of whether I want to be a structural engineer, whether I want to do construction management, and even in the back of my mind, since I've done research associated with materials before, and I've done like fiber reinforced polymers as well. I've thought about materials in some light in the past, so I'm kind of in that kind of three-way crossroads, I guess you can call it. But my top two are structural engineering and construction management for sure.
All right.
For me, it's also like coming back and doing the master's. It's just like, they tell you could always come back and do it whenever. The truth is, once I get used to that 9 to 5, just working and make money, come back home and not have to worry about anything, I feel like it'll be very hard for me to want to come back. But the only reason I feel like I would want to do a master's is only if it offers me the option to have a position where I have some sort of more leadership. I feel like that's where I really shine as far as like in the working world. Like I don't mind being bossed around per se, but I like having a say in things. So that's the main reason as to why I would want to do the masters. If I feel like Cummins themselves don't have an option like that, I probably wouldn't go with them. But yeah, again, for me, I just have to wait till the summer.
I agree a lot with Eduardo in that sense. Like, I've always thought that my skills as a leader are very invaluable, and I would hope that if I did a master's, it would put me in the position to have more say in what's going on.
Yeah.
And not even so much for say, having to have a say. I don't care too much for having a say as to what's going on, but more so, I just feel like I'm better suited for it because, okay, I'm better suited as a leader just because I feel like I can manage people very, very well. So I can organize teams and make sure that whatever the objective that's getting done will get done on time and things like that. I just feel that I'm very suited for that position, which is why I'm leaning towards construction management. I feel like that would be the best way for me to use my skills in my field.
Yeah, for me, it's not really the say, like you said. It's just like, it's not like I don't want to boss around people or anything like that. I just want to have the opportunity to build up a good team, a good friendly team where, like, you know, having to come to work doesn't feel like a hassle. You know, it's like it's a good experience. So that's what I would like to do.
On that note, do you have any stories or experiences of your leadership that you'd like to share?
For me, it's honestly, you're basically asking me like freaking interview questions right now.
Yeah.
For me, it's nothing school related because again, when I started my research, I worked with a graduate student, so he was basically the boss.
Yeah.
For me, it's only like, you know, when I work at Anthony's as a waiter.
I mean, it's still valuable experience.
It's still valuable, yeah. You know, like working, like I never had like a leadership position as like, oh, he's the head server or anything like that. But there'd be multiple shifts where like I was the one that had the most experience. I knew what I was doing the whole time, and it was kind of just like not bossing around people, but like we work with a lot of like kids nowadays, where like 16, 17-year-olds, and it's just trying to like get them to like work well, but also not make them feel like they're not welcomed. So I've had a lot of experience with that. As far as the waiter business, it's been great for me. Just like the stress factor of it is ridiculous, and just I've also worked in the kitchen, so it's like getting through like super busy nights and actually like doing it. It's like it's one of the most fulfilling things ever. Like it's really helped me as a person, just building me up, my character and whatnot. So that's most of my leadership experience is being a waiter, honestly.
Nice.
I think that most of my leadership experience comes from the projects that I've taken on. Starting from high school, with the Marine Science Lab, I always had a team around me. I had 3 people that were on the team. I had Hector Duran, Israel Palencia, Kevin Cantarero. They all worked with me, and I made sure to give them each like a task to take on, whether it be you guys have to look over this tank, you have to do this water change today, but making sure that they were always feeling good about whatever they had to do. You know, I never gave them a task that I felt that was just, you know, a tedious task. I mean, there was tedious tasks that were associated with whatever overall big task I gave them, but it was more so about encouraging them to, you know, take pride in whatever they were doing. And so that's something that just from high school. Then when I got into college, during the COVID year, I also did another project where I recruited 2 friends from FIU, which are George Marrero, Daniel Hernandez. I recruited 2 students from the University of Puerto Rico, Isabella and Kenneth. I spoke to Hector Duran once again, which he's studying electrical engineering at Georgia Tech. And I spoke to Vanessa Tascon, which she studies human factors engineering at Tufts.
Yep. And
so we all got together and we started like this. We wanted to create a reverse vending machine that was tailored toward, or how do I say, targeted towards universities. So the idea would be that you would recycle the bottle and you would get points for recycling by putting it into our machine. You would get the points on your mobile phone, and you'd be able to cash out these points at like a restaurant on campus,
yep.
Right? So obviously this is something that takes multiple different sectors. There's the machine going on, which Hector was in charge of for the electrical engineering. Also, Vanessa had a say in what the machine was actually going to look like, the instructions that were going to be on the machine, making sure that, as well as on the app, so Vanessa had a say on the visuals of the app as well, just to make sure that the user experience was as friendly as possible. Then we had Daniel, George, Isabella, Kenneth with the design team for the app itself, which was the software aspect of it.
Yep.
So I made sure that we met deadlines and made sure that everybody felt that they had a significant role on the team. So yeah, that was I think that's the biggest example of my leadership.
That's a good
Yeah.
one, though.
That's a really good example. And I think it's important to highlight that neither is necessarily better than the other. I think they're both very invaluable experiences in showing how you can be a leader. And so you don't necessarily have to be doing things through school all the time to show that. For example, clubs or fraternity organizations, you can go ahead and do your own thing like how Lewis did, or do something outside of campus like how Eduardo did. And they both can highlight very important aspects of your character and how you interact with people. And for myself, I haven't really had a huge leadership experience, mostly starting things myself. This is, I guess, an example of it, me doing this podcast. Very grateful for both of you being here as well.
Thank you for having us.
And yeah, it doesn't necessarily always have to be a club, and you can really just find something that works for you and your schedule. Just for any high schoolers or college students out there who are wondering how they can kind of boost their resume in that sense. Those are it for the questions that I have today. I really appreciate that you guys came out here and talked about engineering. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. Also follow the podcast on any platform that you're listening on. And thank you for listening.
I have a question.
Before you
end it. No, so just living in Miami, obviously we live in Miami, and it's a place where we're super, super materialistic, as bad as it sounds. Like, everybody has brand
Flex
new
culture.
car. Yeah. Everybody wants to live in like the biggest penthouse, whatever, be the boss, have a section at a club, whatever. So, there's like I'm saying, you kind of want to show off, right? And I don't feel like our careers are tailored towards that. It's more of a, you go to the office, you work a 9 to 5. It's not a super luxurious, whatever, something that you can show off. It's nothing. Collar. It's something that you can't even like vlog about. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be something crazy. So how do you feel about our career paths and, living in Miami with all that?
For me, the biggest struggle is that I've realized that as a mechanical engineering, here's the thing. Whatever job I apply to in Miami, it's super likely that the starting salary will be $70K no matter what. And the reason I'm not going to take that is because I feel like I did not go through 4 years of school like just for $70K. Like, I don't want to do that. So the biggest thing for me is that no matter what, if I want to start off at a higher salary, I have no choice but to go to another state that's kind of like in the middle of nowhere. And I love Miami. Like he said, it's a flex culture. That's like probably the biggest thing I hate about Miami. But, all my friends are here, my family's here. I do love the city as a whole. Like, I've had a lot of fun in this city. So having to move on from that, that's the worst part for me. But as far as engineering, like, my future plan. So you were asking about our future plan earlier, but this is like my future plan. I would love to build experience, like 2-3 years experience at another company, hopefully in a leadership position, and eventually try to apply at a big city like Miami, maybe Seattle, maybe Austin, Texas. I'm very used to the city life, and I guess that's my biggest take on it. Yeah.
So I guess like the biggest way to succeed here is just like not to buy into the whole flex culture.
And that's another thing. When you go to another state to work, there's nothing to do. In other words, you're not going to spend your money on anything. Here in Miami, you could go out for one little night just to hang out with your friends. You're going to spend $100.
For sure.
So it's a flex culture. And what does a flex culture do? It pulls you into that flex culture. You want to flex too.
Mm-hmm.
So then you start spending more money. It's just, that's the problem with it. So I'm kind of, I'm grateful that I'm going to have the opportunity to go to another state, save up a bunch of money, get experience. But I am going to miss Miami 100%. So I would hope to come back in the future at some point.
How about you?
Well, I kind of already came to the resolution that I'm probably not going to be in Miami for a while. Food science jobs just aren't really here. It's mostly crypto, finance, engineering, as you said. But food science jobs, you really need to be like somewhat close to the plants, and there aren't really a lot of plants here for that. I'm currently trying to get an MBA. So we'll see where that takes me, but probably still not Miami. I mean, it's just very expensive to be
I
here,
totally understand that.
and I want to save up and do other things with my money other than just clubbing. But that flex culture is definitely a real thing. I never personally bought into it, but I recognize it for what it is and the influence it has on social dynamics. And I'm not happy with it, so why stay for that reason? Yeah, that's how I feel about it.
On the note of your like not being a lot of jobs for your specific industry here, I don't know if it's okay if we talk about your agriculture venture.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so how about that in Florida? Is that here in Florida at all?
Yeah, so he's referring to cannabis. And I'd like to make some consumer product goods in the cannabis space, particularly in the edible space. There is room for that in Florida. Unfortunately, I don't see Florida moving from the medical situation for some time. And right now, it's mostly owned, like the companies and all that stuff, since it is medical, is mostly owned by really big operators who are multi-state. So their R&D facilities might not even be in Florida. They might be in California or New York or Boston, wherever they started. That's Trulieve, MedMen, Curaleaf. They all started outside of Florida and then came in once the medical stuff boomed, because they had the cash already to pretty much establish themselves. So I could end up here, but probably won't. And even if Florida does become recreational, those big operators already have a tremendous amount of real estate here. So it's not like anyone could just really jump in, which is why I'm very excited about the New York State market, where they're trying to keep all those multi-state operators out and really have it be the small guys that are running everything. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And they're also trying to do like the social equity stuff, keeping it for minorities and not really for a lot of the big wigs that tend to be Caucasian, unfortunately. So that's
What's your like top 3 states right now?
to live in or for cannabis?
Both.
To live in, I mean, honestly, I don't have a preference. I'm really just trying to stack right now. But they would most likely be cannabis states, so I can at least boost my network outside of the New York State area. So I guess it would be New York State, Michigan, and Virginia. Virginia is another upcoming market.
Cool.
But we got to see what those regulations are looking like. Are they more favorable to the small guys or the big players?
All right.
A lot of questions.
A lot of questions. Yeah. All right. Well, if you have any questions for these guys, I'll have their Instagrams in the bio or in the description, whatever. You could DM them, what have you. You could also DM me any questions as well relating to cannabis or just to connect more with other people that have been on the podcast. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you, Albert.
You.